sunny ways, my friends. Sunny ways.
You sneaky. You're running as an outsider.
I am an outsider.
We have recently switched to drinking water bottles out of when we have water bottles out of plastic. Away from plastic towards paper, like drink box water bottles. So that.
Well, Lottie frickin' God!
You're ready to fight, aren't you? I can feel
I intend to resign as party leader, as prime minister.
Is this true?
Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
Guess what? I got a fever. And the only prescription is more cowbell.
Mr. Prime Minister, will there always be a Canada?
There will always be a Canada.
All right, elbows up.
Elbows up.
It's like people only do things because they get paid. And that's just really sad.
So the answer to that is to stop being stupid.
My great pleasure to introduce my husband, the Prime Minister who will make Canada strong. And Canada full!
I can't do it. We'll do it live. We'll do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
Thank you. It will be an honor to continue to fight for you and to be a champion of your cause as we go forward.
Let's fucking go.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Fringe. Welcome to Unhinged Fringe. Tonight here on the channel, joining me live, of course, our newest and vibrant co-host, Matt. Celtic is not here tonight, unfortunately. A little family emergency, last minute, folks. She couldn't prevent it, obviously. So our wishes go out to Celtic. Canuck, hopefully she'll be here next week. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing great. That intro gets me every time. I love it.
Who doesn't love that intro?
I don't think I've ever been described as vibrant before. That's
colorfully vibrant, positively negative. That's the word that's always used about me. I think that's a good way to bring it about. Folks, I hope you guys are having a great week. I'm glad you joined us tonight. The country is falling apart, but we can all be happy here at least. There's a lot going on, a lot we got to talk about tonight. Again, Unhinged Fringe is typically stuff that doesn't make the cutting room floor or stuff that we think just needs to get out there. For you guys sooner than later. So let's get it going with a good old-fashioned roll call. We'll let people pile into the room. Let's see if we can get somebody from every province in the country and see how many Americans we can get in here from watching around the U.S. and those around the world. Let's get it going on. We've got Squid coming in from Calgary. We've got Carol and Gerald coming in from Calgary as well. Mike TV Dub, I mute the intro. Can't stand the lispy fruitcake's voice. Mike's coming in from good old Winnipeg. Shout out to our mods, by the way. You guys do a fantastic job. Luca's joining us once again from Burnaby, BC. We got Lee joining us from Edmonton. We got Marika, my favorite mod named Marika, coming in from Montreal. Welcome in. We've got Nelson joining us from New Brunswick. We've got Mystical stuck on Derek's roof. Anybody got a ladder? Stay up there. I don't want you coming down. You're stuck. You live there now. Alberta Girls joining us from Calgary. David Brewer. Oh, he's joining us from Springfield. Welcome in. I know I do that joke every time, but it just never gets old. Raptor Guy coming in from Scarborough. Gina coming in from Saskatoon. We've got, or Saskatchewan, sorry. Charlotte's coming in from PEI. Charlotte Town coming in from PEI. Lisa joining us from good old America. We love Americans. They're wonderful. Welcome into the stream. Who else do we have here? Jancor's joining us from Ottawa. We got Captain Calgary joining us from Wisconsin. No, he's in from Calgary. We got Keith coming in from Elkhorn, Manitoba. Delphine coming in from Fort Mac. Shelley from Ontario. I am Smiley, I hope so, coming in from New Brunswick. Lynn joining us from Calgary. All sorts. Coming in from useless Bill Blair's riding. Good to have you in here. Mike from Calgary, not from Canmore, but from Calgary. Captain Calgary, yes, you're in from Calgary. We've got Rob joining us from Fort Capel, Saskatchewan. Brandon joining us, yelling for Alberta sovereignty. I'm assuming you're joining us from good old Alberta. We got Mark joining us from North Ontario. Go, Brandon. Let's go, Brandon. Brian Watson joining us from Wasaga Beach. Watch out for the poop. Mystical joining us from Ohio. Good old USA. Cleveland rocks. Cleveland rocks. Guys, we got to get caught up in the chat. We gave it a few minutes for people to get in. I see people all over the country joining us, all over the United States. Welcome to all of our viewers. Hit those thumbs ups, folks. It's going to tell people that this is the stream they need to be in, that they got to get tuned in to what we're talking about tonight. There is a lot going on. Now, keep in mind, we're going to get to the subject of tonight's title, but that doesn't mean that that's what this entire show is about. In fact, Matt, you got a few things you want to talk about. Why don't we start with one of those things that grinds your gears?
Well, a subject today that's very near and dear to my heart as a libertarian, self-defense and defense of your home. I'm sure a lot of you have seen the goings-on in Ontario there, where the guy found a guy in his house at 3 a.m. and he beat him with life-threatening injuries, and they arrested him and charged him with assault and assault with a weapon. They didn't describe what weapon. I'll assume he grabbed the nearest stick or whatever he had handy. And now he's being charged. And now keep in mind, not that this is relevant, but that man was already wanted for felonies. And he was armed with a stolen gun that he had already stolen from another break-in he had already done. I'm going to bring up some stuff here.
And this was in Ontario, correct?
Yes. Where is that? Lindsay. Man is facing charges after he allegedly assaulted an intruder in his Lindsay home early Monday morning. This incident happened at an apartment on Kent Street shortly after 3 a.m. The suspect was asleep. Notice how they call him the suspect, was asleep when he awoke to find the intruder inside his apartment. Investors say an altercation ensued, and the intruder sustained serious, life-threatening injuries as a result. 44-year-old Lindsay man was charged with aggravated assault and assault with a weapon. The intruder was charged with 4 offenses, including possession of a weapon for a dangerous purpose and break and enter. The police say the intruder was already wanted at the time of his arrest for unrelated offenses. So,
and I seen Doug Ford with a quote today saying that our system is broken, yet he's the one who advocates for it.
That guy needs to switch parties because obviously he's a liberal.
Well, we've all known that for a long time. But what's funny about the whole situation is that they say, well, the system's broken because they don't want to get any backlash. Yet broken liberal policies, I'm assuming, allowed this man who's breaking into homes into the country.
They don't mention his name, so I don't really know. But that is immaterial. We don't have any sort of castle law or doctrine in this country. We don't have the right. You have the right to defense up to reasonable force, but there's no chart. There's no measurable what's reasonable force. It's whatever the judge decides is reasonable force. So if you punch the guy in the face once and he runs away, that's fine. If you have to fight with the guy and whatever, and you lose or whatever it happens to be, that's fine. But my stance, and this should be the stance everywhere, is you are the aggressor. You are in my home. It's not up to me to determine whether you're bigger than me or stronger than me, or whether you're armed, or whether you're just there to steal my PlayStation, or whether you want to tie me up and murder my family in front of me. That's not a distinction I have to make waking up at 3 a.m. in my house. So reasonable force is whatever it takes to put you down, up to and including death.
So what's funny about that is I know a lot of people advocate that, hey, if somebody comes into my home, I should be allowed to defend it. Very similar to a lot of laws that we see in the United States. Again, when you talk about people's amendment rights to own firearms, possess firearms, secure their households, castle law, Canada definitely is lacking, but with no real roadmap as to do's and don'ts. You're basically at the mercy of a court to decide, well, this was within reason or this isn't, and it's a matter of personal opinion.
You weren't there. You don't know what his demeanor or how he acted but you find somebody in the dark in your house. You're barely awake. It's 3 a.m. You're supposed to make a snap judgment on what level of threat that person is. and to act accordingly. No, like,
Well,
you've entered my home, your life is forfeit.
And I think that that's what most Canadians could get on board with, that if I stood in a room with another aggressor that came into my house and said, it's us or them. I got 3 children in this house. I got my wife to protect. I don't think jail even enters our minds when deciding,
No.
okay, got to be done, or, oh, I'm really sorry, take what you like, I can't touch you because I'll get arrested and go to jail.
And it's just,
why
any reasonable person would just react, like, especially if you're home and your family is home, you're just going to do what you need to do, and that should be perfectly fine. And there shouldn't be some sort of weird level of like, okay, well, maybe you should have done this, or maybe you should have done that. Like, the criminal forfeits all rights when he enters another person's home. He is the aggressor. I'm not in his house, he's in mine.
Mm-hmm. I got a few honorable mentions I got to get to, and then we're going to get to that because there's something I want to bring up about that. Raptor Guy with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much. To the tune of Tuesday's gone, Critchley's gone, Pierre wins. That bag is gone. Good riddance. I appreciate that. Thank you. Carol Munger gifting 5 unacceptable Fringe memberships to the Patriots Club. Thank you so much. Welcome to all 5 of our new Patriots in the chat. Snow with a $2 super chat. In lieu of castle law, I suggest shovel ownership. Now, if everybody's missing the joke on shovels, there was that video going around because you can't talk about firearms really on social media, or they start to ban you out or suppress your materials. He made a video talking about fully automatic shovels, and here's what we're going to do with shovels, and so anytime somebody cuts the shovel joke on the channel, that's essentially what they're talking about. Now, there was a screenshot I'd sent you, Matt, on the break-ins in the Ontario area. Now, this was Ryan Garrettson over on Twitter. And I keep telling people, anytime you're on X, if you have not yet, go and follow Ryan Garrettson, because anytime it's a slow news day or you're just looking for accurate information, this guy's usually got it. He does a very good job of what he does on the internet. Let's pull that up.
I got it.
Here we go. So this is in Ontario. So it says here, in the last month, Mississauga and Brampton have had 191 break and enters. This is just in this region. And this is where I say this is the problem with Doug Ford.
In a month.
And I guarantee you the majority of these break-ins are people who shouldn't be in the country. People who came here on asylum from places like Nicaragua, Honduras,
Uganda,
South America, Uganda. Maybe they go get a lollipop. This is just one region of Ontario. And meanwhile, you've got Doug Ford saying, oh, well, our system's broken and something needs to be looked at. But here's the problem, Dougie boy. You're the man who's in charge of that. So really, there's nobody to blame for the system being broken but himself. And this is the problem we're finding with Doug Ford. I'm actually shocked he didn't blame Donald Trump for all of this happening, because that seems to be his go-to on everything. He's still in election mode, where if anything bad happens in Canada, it's Donald Trump's fault. And no ownership, no responsibility taken, no accountability for the fact that we've left our door open and we continue to bring in these migrants, illegal migrants, who trash our country and rob us blind, steal our houses. There was a campaign at one point where failed woke mayor Olivia Chow was in Toronto telling people, leave your car keys outside on your railings so that people don't break into your house anymore. They just take your car. Let it go.
There's a really good video on Twitter where they show the cop that made that announcement for her saying, just leave your fobs by your front door just to avoid an altercation. And they cut that in with the guy in Florida. You won't get in trouble if you shoot criminals in your house. Actually, we prefer that you do. Yep. It was perfect.
It's very contrast to me how the United States gets it right on so many levels. And I hear people saying all the time when it comes to firearm ownership in the States that, hey, well, these rules were put in, at a time when the British were at war with Americans and laws have changed. The ownership, status has changed. The landscape has changed. I say, you know what? I think it's good the way it is, that if somebody comes into my home, I have the right to defend it. You can't just walk out lawless in the streets and,
as
cap people.
As a concept that is very near and dear to my heart, the right to defend yourself and your home is just one of the most basic natural rights that every citizen of every country should have. And
so
it drives me nuts.
The question that I have, and the thing that I'm wondering, is what is it that people like? So if somebody broke into Doug Ford's house and his security wasn't there, what would Doug Ford do? Do you think Doug? Well, we all know what Doug would do. He'd piss his pants. But like I'm saying, like if he was given a situation where it's him or you, you got to make a choice. You think Doug's going to sit there and say, well, it's against the law for me to intervene, or I'm going to go to jail if I defend my family? Or do you think Doug Ford is going to defend his household and defend...
You silly peasants. Laws aren't for politicians. Those are just for you and me.
I got Raptor Guy with a $5 super chat. Thank you. Maybe I need to set up Kevin McAllister's traps to keep invaders out. I think if you just put down...
I still have my micro machines.
Well, see, micro machines would be effective, but if you ever remember in Home Alone, they had the Michael Jordan cutout being wheeled around the house on the train. I think if you go get ice agent cutouts and have them roaming around the windows, and maybe like a Donald Trump one, you might have people stay away from the house. I think that's a good deterrent for these guys. Or, gainfully employable businesses that want to hire people to have jobs, because that would definitely keep people away from those break-ins. Granite Man with $2 super chat. Carney plan, destruct Canada, align with China. We're going to get into that tonight. Thank you for the $2 super chat. Brad Wilcox with the $5 super chat. Nothing is going to change. Alberta independence all the way. I'm going to get into that as well tonight. I know people are so sick of talking about Alberta independence, right? We're gonna get. If
you guys do it, I'm moving. If you guys do it, I'm moving.
Well, you should move anyways. Well, I guess you wouldn't have been here for 2 years. I was going to say you should move and get the vote in for us, but you can't. Speaking of Doug Ford, we got to talk a little bit about what's happening in the rest of Canada. I guess the subject of tonight's stream, or the main subject of tonight's stream, because I put in a video today talking about Pierre Poilievre's win, and a lot of people might have thought, "Oh, great, here we go. Fringe is crapping all over Pierre again." Not at all. In fact, I think Pierre did an amazing job in his by-election. I'm shocked to see the 80% margin win. I think that's fantastic. It says that the party is listening. They're reading the room. I really like that. But one of the things I mentioned in that video is Pierre kind of has the role of someone akin to Sisyphus, where he's pushing the boulder uphill forever. Matt, I talked to you about this earlier, that the biggest problem Pierre faces, and it's one that super lawyer Keith Wilson pointed out in the video, is that if Pierre aligns his interests or his talking points with Eastern Canada, meaning Quebec and Ontario or Southern Ontario, in order to garner his seats and his votes, he alienates everybody pretty much west of Toronto, and he loses seats. But if he panders to the West and says, well, I understand they need pipelines, they need jobs, we need to stop bringing in migrants, basically anything liberal and anti-liberal, and he risks losing the seats where he needs to be elected. So you run into, and one of those things I want to show here before we get into that, for anybody saying, oh, Derek, you're always picking on Southern Ontario. This is where 70% of Canada's population lives, in this red zone. Keep that in mind. 70%.
Which also means that's where 70% of the seats are.
70% of the seats in the country are in this red area. This red area, this red zone, decides. It says half of Canadians live here. It's slightly below where the rest gets lit up for 70%, but half of all of Canada lives in this red zone. Now, this is the large per capita that decides essentially who's in charge of the country. This is your entire landmass. I know people don't need a geography lesson, but this is your entire landmass. This red area is where Pierre, Mark Carney, the Bloc, whoever's in charge of the NDP after this, where they have to focus for their votes. So the biggest problem we have as a country, when it comes to Pierre, when it comes to his future, is that even if his policies are bang on, if they're fantastic, if they're wonderful, his win the other night means nothing but good opposition in this country. Because even as he pitches things like the Canada Sovereignty Act, he won't be able to pass it through because he's not going to gain the support of any of the other parties who can easily topple him in a vote. So, like, where do you see it going from here, Matt? Where do you think the country's headed?
Honestly, I'm a pessimist, and I like Pierre. I mean, there are some things that he says and does that I'm not cool with, but I mean, obviously, he's the best choice out of all of the federal leaders that we have for people in our particular line of thinking. But he's never going to be able to get anything done until they change that map, because you can't govern the country like you don't govern the oil fields in Alberta the same as you govern the streets of Toronto. You don't govern the farms in Manitoba and Saskatchewan the same as you govern the Lower Mainland in BC. And the federal government in this country has so much authority, and the provinces have just taken it for so long that people think Danielle Smith is crazy when she tells the feds to kick rocks. And no, that's how it's supposed to be. The provinces are supposed to be way more independent from the federal government than they actually are. And they've gone so long without asserting their independence that people think that's illegal. And I don't see how. I mean, Pierre might get elected, but I don't think he's going to get a majority. And the Liberals, you only have 4 years. Your first year, even if he does win, your first year, you spend that time trying to undo everything the last party did for. I mean, he's got 10 years of shit to undo now because the Liberals have been in power for so long. And then you spend 2 years trying to actually do your own stuff, and then you spend your fourth year trying to get reelected.
Mm-hmm.
So the endless cycle of every 4 years, it's tough to really make meaningful change on a national scale.
Well, and it's funny because a lot of people are telling me, and it sits with Deborah's comment here that Elections Canada needs to be reformed. It's not just the reform. We need more Senate seats. We need more representation. You know, it shouldn't just be per capita of residents. It should also be things like GDP. Capital cities should have some kind of pull in terms of how the votes are decided. There's a number of ways it could be restructured. The problem is, and this is one of the things that Preston Manning once said to me, is that it doesn't matter who's in office, because he kind of chuckled at Justin Trudeau campaigning on electoral reform. Nobody is going to change the rules because they work in favor anytime they want to set the elections to win. And that's part of the problem. And people are saying online, even after today's video on the channel, Stephen Harper was the last Conservative Prime Minister we'll see in Canada, simply because the Liberals have figured out a way to rig the elections in their favor based on that one zone of Canada. Anytime something goes out of line, it's LGB this, or we're going to fund stuff overseas, or give our money to other countries, or they give distractions to win their seats.
If Trudeau had changed the electoral systems the way he had first promised to, he would have lost the first election he had.
But that's the point, is that's one of the things that Preston Manning said to me, is that any politician that says, I'm going to fix the system, it's kind of like with the president when they talk about the Electoral College, that there's certain things that if you were to fight the government on, they would never let you win. They would never let you in. It's kind of like that on Parliament Hill. Like Manning said to me that anybody who campaigns on reforming the country and is serious about it, if Pierre were to go out tomorrow and say, yeah, you know what, I'm from Alberta, I agree, Alberta's got a bad rep, I don't like what's going on with the way our votes are run, well, people would say, well, he's a whiner, he's just complaining because he lost. And he'd say, well, I'm going to get in office and rearrange the way our elections are run so that we have better representation across the country. He's instantly out of a job. You know, those in control don't want to lose that power. They're never going to allow for that to happen. So
even the people in his own party, like, they're not going to fix it so that they can't have their own jobs.
Well, and that's a good point, because when you look at the Conservative Party, the majority of them are from out west. So if they fix that election, it could ultimately change whether it's easy or difficult for them to win their seats to stick around and get their pensions. It's you're never going to have the support of the House. And I've said for a long time that you need an outside entity. And I don't know, please don't think that I have the solution for what that entity would be, but there should be something above the government that can say, look, times have changed. We got to fix these things. We're not getting proper representation across the country, or the people aren't happy with it. Why is it up to the people who are mandated by us to decide how they get to keep their jobs?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? The second that being a politician became a full-time career that you could start when you're 18 and go all the way through to retirement, and they get to vote on their own raises, their own policies, how long they get to stay in office. And like, why do people who sit in a comfy chair in an office in the thing and do nothing except decide what to do with the money they steal from us make like $1 million a year or whatever the salary is? I don't know what it is for a prime minister or a representative, whatever it is. It's very high for the amount of real work you have to do.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's so I believe that the average backbencher in the House of Commons runs somewhere in the mid 100,000s in terms of what their pay is. I know for Pierre it's over like 200. Again, I don't have exact figures, so I should have pulled that up if we were going to talk about it. But essentially, that's not including all the benefits they get, the kickbacks, the write-offs, the claims that they get. Like, a lot of those guys get gas cards. They don't pay for their vehicles. They get subsidized on their flights and housing and all sorts of different things at the taxpayer's expense. The problem that I see with our political backdrop is that this used to be called public servants, and now it's more a business. It's a business racket. It's like you said, it's an easy roadmap to say, well, I can get in at a young age and retire rich. So how do we fix our electoral system if every time someone's going to walk in, it's political suicide?
I can't say that on air.
Oh, there you go. I mean, here's the problem. And I want to get into this. I know this was going to be like an added bit, but this is where I say, like, when we talk about Alberta independence, it's not just, I bring it up because I'm in Alberta, but keep in mind, folks, that I'm bringing this up because every province should be at this point, not just, I understand other provinces don't have the right to vote to, leave, or their governments won't allow for even discussion of referendum. But what I'm talking about when I say Alberta's ready to go is the fact that provinces have had enough. We're at our limit. Now, again, we showed on that video earlier today how Danielle Smith is being targeted by Tom Lukaszuk, his silly petition, and those people tied to the media and hedge funds, etc., to make her look like a villain. But if you think anything's going to change when we get back to Parliament Hill in the fall, aside from, again, good opposition, I think that's the benefit of Pierre being there. At least we have some form of opposition. Look at the waste that we still see. Now, this was a story you and I were chatting about earlier, Matt. Good old Michelle Ferreri, friend of the channel, tweeting this out. Good thing these fine liberals are in charge of our economy. Of course, she's addressing an article coming out saying Canada Embassy in Washington hired $2,000 US an hour consultants for tips on how to talk to Americans, including explanation of right-wing messaging. So they're paying $2,000 an hour to a consultant, or many consultants, to understand how to talk to Americans. Is this really where we're at?
I mean, it's where we've always been. They have the money you're spending isn't yours. You don't have to account for it. Nobody checks over what you've done with it. Nobody gives you shit when you misspend it. Or if they do, it's just me and you on a YouTube channel yelling about it. Why wouldn't you just do whatever you want? The real question is when you hire a consulting firm for $2,000 an hour, which politician has a hand in that firm, and how much are they making off that?
Well, and that's my question, is that when you look at SDTC, when you look at Dalian, when you look at all the shady government contracts that have gone out over the years, there's obviously, my guess is 2,000 an hour is being claimed to being paid to consultants. But again, I'd ask for a paper trail confirming it's $2,000 an hour. I don't know who charges that kind of money. Keep in mind, you can get lawyers for less than that. Good lawyers too. Oh, Matt's cut out. Oh, there he is.
That's weird.
Yeah, had a drop out there. I guess. See, they don't like us talking about the government. They're cutting you off. They're on to us.
Well, just for everybody watching, I'm on High Lord Elon's Starlink. I'm a little rural, and it doesn't like thunderstorms, and it's thunderstorming here right now. So
there you go. So Celtic's gone. Celtic's gone. We're dealing with the weather. That's okay. We can. We'll power through. Raptor guy with a $2 super chat. Liberal voters can reap what they sow. I agree with that to an extent, but the problem is the rest of the country is going to suffer as well. Thank you for the super chat. We've got Bradley Wilcox, the $5 super chat. The only way we'll get ahead and out of poverty and be able to support our family is to be on our own or join the U.S. We need our freedom. So let's address that elephant in the room, because I've said before, I think Alberta Independence, we need to be our own sovereign country. I don't think joining the U.S. is, as much as I love Americans, and I want to be very clear on that one, I don't think it's beneficial, because why would a province leave a country to join and ditch the debt of that country to join another country and inherit their debt? I don't see that as a viable trade-off. But I do think Alberta can have a great working relationship with the United States. I don't think we need to alienate them like Mark Carney does, or like the Liberals do. We could essentially become an economic powerhouse when it comes to our oil business, our oil industry. I'm not sure. I mean, Matt, have you thought much about where it'd be beneficial for the U.S., or if you think it's more better for independence?
I think the U.S. system, being a republic and a Senate system, is better than what we have, but it's still an entrenched central authority with all of the crazy things that come with it. And it's different, but there's just as much government waste and corruption down there too. I think it would be nice to be able to start over fresh and rewrite your own constitution and try and tweak the systems, because both the Canadian and the American system are like 300 years old. Like, you needed to send a horse with a guy with a letter in a leather case so that it wouldn't get rained on, and it would take him months to get to the capital and back so that the state or the province could exchange words with the leader of the country. Like, the system hasn't changed all that much.
Yeah, and that's again where I think that when we talk about Alberta going sovereign, a lot of people seem to think that Albertans have their head in the clouds saying, oh, everything's going to be perfect if we do that. If we were to rewrite the things that need to be changed and say, this is how a current functioning society should be run, nothing is going to be perfect. And Albertans already know there's going to be challenges if they were to claim independence. It's not as simple as you vote for it and then suddenly, poof, you're no longer part of Canada, you're on your own and you're all rich. It's a matter of there's going to be uphill battles. But the real question that I hear Albertans asking each other when that gets brought up is, do you think it's going to make us any worse off than we already are, though, when it comes to the government? If we have to struggle, if we have to figure a few things out, or if it takes us a few years to get our heads above water, is that not better doing it on our own than doing it under Mark Carney or doing it under a liberal government that keeps their boot on our neck? So I understand. Well, I think so. And I think that I think that, again, people misrepresent that Albertans have their heads in the clouds and they don't know what they're talking about, or they don't know what they want. But here's the issue. The question remains. I was talking with Theo Fleury earlier today, and we were talking about this in particular, and he tweeted me out saying, why, like, I'm surprised at how many people have their elbows up and still want to stick around in this mess of a country. I mean, look at what we've got Doug Ford tweeting out today. Ryan Garrettson again saying, how long can Canadians keep these industries afloat? This leftist should be demanding the federal government get a deal done. So you've got Danielle Smith running all over the country saying, we need to be diplomatic. We have to find a way to work with the United States. The Canadian government has said for months, no, we won't. We're going to push for tariffs. We're going to go dollar for dollar. We're going to fight with Donald Trump. We're going to make, gas on a fire. Now you've got Doug Ford tweeting out, I'm proud to stand with the United Steelworkers in Hamilton today to announce $70 million in support for workers being hit by U.S. tariffs. Where are we getting that $70 million from?
Same place we get everything else.
Well, that's probably going to come from our pockets. He says, from using Ontario steel in our $200 billion infrastructure plan to investing in training and skills development, we will always have the backs of our workers. It's that last sentence that makes me question anybody. Does this not sound familiar to you? Have we already heard this one before? It's like the most overplayed song on the radio back in the day. We'll always have the backs of Canadians. We'll always have the backs of our workers. He's quoting Justin Trudeau. Yeah, he's quoting Justin Trudeau. Like, this is why provinces have had enough, because with even Pierre winning, that's part of the issue, is even with Pierre winning, we're not going to be able to get there. I mean, look at Michelle Rempel-Garnier retweeting, or Pierre retweeting her post. I'll table legislation to end the practice of judges considering non-citizens' immigration status and sentencing after being convicted in committing crimes. Conservatives will restore the value of Canadian citizenship. Becoming a Canadian is a privilege, not a right. You won't get to do that, Michelle Rempel-Garnier.
You could table whatever you want, but that doesn't mean it's going to go anywhere. You have to fight the Liberals and the NDP in the House to pass anything.
And that essentially is the problem. You've got Pierre Poilievre talking about the Canadian Sovereignty Act, the Canada Sovereignty Act that he wants to pitch. You've got Michelle Rempel saying, I'm going to do this. And it essentially, and I want to play devil's advocate here, folks. I don't want you to get mad or think that I'm pooing all over the Conservatives. But ask yourself this. When you look at Mark Carney, when you look at what he's done in the last 100 days, anytime he tweets out that we went and talked to people, we heard what workers had to say, we're going to open up our economic trade province to province, we're going to be an economic powerhouse, and nothing gets done. And people turn around and say, you weren't able to get deals with the United States. You landed us the largest tariffs of all time. You went on vacation twice over the summer. You keep talking about all of these things you're going to do, yet in over 100 days, you haven't even greenlit a single project. How is that any different, folks? And again, not to shit on the Conservatives, but I'm more asking, when you think change is coming, how is it any different when the Conservatives say, we're going to table this legislation, we're going to put forward that legislation, and we're going to fight for your rights? You can fight till the cows come home. You're not going to get it. So nothing, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be done. And that's where I come up with the question of what else is there besides Keith Wilson even coming out on election night for Pierre saying, I believe that unless we have independence, we're never going to see the Canada we want ever again.
We can't fix the system with the system. It's too stacked.
And they'll never allow that to be altered because the status quo was in their favor.
I actually, a couple of years ago when I first started paying attention for the first time in my life, watched the House sitting and how it went and how it goes and what they do there. And I was actually in shock. Like, this is our government and this is how it works. So like one side, somebody stands up and they have to address the guy on the chair, the speaker, because it's British parliamentary system. You can't talk to the actual person on the other side of the aisle. You have to talk to that guy. And they're like, Mr. Speaker, blah, 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 blah. And then everybody on their side of the aisle goes, yeah, here, yeah, yeah. And then the other person gets up and goes, Mr. Speaker, blah, 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 blah. And their side goes, yeah, here, yeah, here. And I'm just like, this is the government? This is how this works? Like, I remember distinctly one section where Pierre got up and said, Mr. Speaker, what is the average price of the home in Toronto now? And what was it 10 years ago? When he sits down, and then the Liberal guy, I can't remember what his name was, stands up and goes, we work hard for Canadians and we will always stand up for Canadians, Canadians first. And we're going to do what we can and everything. And he basically talked for a minute and said actually nothing. Yeah. And I'm like, how is that legal for you? And then Pierre stands back up and goes, the price 10 years ago and the price now, sits back down. And the guy gets up again and says a bunch of nonsense and sits back down. How is it allowed that somebody can ask you a direct question 3 times in a row and you don't have to answer it?
Yeah. Yet it's called question period.
Shock. I was in shock that was how our government functions. Like, how do you do anything if there's no reason for you to actually do anything? Like, there's no accountability. There's like, if you get up and say, when I'm elected, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and then you get elected and you go, you guys can all suck it. I'm not doing any of that. I'm going to do actually the exact complete opposite. There is no legal recourse there. You can't do anything other than vote them out 4 years from now or sooner if you can manage to get some sort of no confidence vote in them. And then they go, oh, well, and they just tra-la-la off into retirement like Trudeau did while facing no consequences for anything you've done ever.
Well, and I've said that too, that parliamentary privilege and all the perks that come with being an MP is asinine in terms of representation for Canadians, because those officials, like you say, who get the 4 years, they can do whatever they want. There's no recourse. There's no absolute guarantee of power to the people who gave them those mandates to say, okay, we've had enough. Like, you're not representing us. You're not doing your job. I asked Garnet Jennis back when I had him on the channel, early 2024, I believe it was. I said, we keep these committees going where we ask people similar questions. They never answer them. They give us word salad. What's the point of these committees if we're never going to press charges? And why can't we have recall legislation for these members in Parliament, similar to Alberta's recall legislation, if we're unhappy with our federal government? And he says, our job is to get to the bottom of everything. And I said, yeah, but if they're never going to answer you, what do we do from there? And he says, well, our job's to get to the bottom of it. He says, as for why we don't have recall legislation, or will never entertain that in the federal government. He says they'd be having recall elections all the time. I said, well, doesn't that say something about our government?
Kind of saying something, isn't it?
It's like you're not the cream of the crop.
Well, they had that inquiry into the invocation of the Emergencies Act, and they found that it was unlawful for him to do so. Well, okay, great. So you had an inquiry. You found out that what he did was unlawful. Now what? Oh, nothing.
Where do we go from here?
What was the point then?
Yeah. Yep. And that was, keep in mind, that's hundreds of thousands, if not over $1 million to run those inquiries. Taxpayer money going out the window. Mm-hmm. All just to say, see, we told you it was illegal. Now what? That was always my question with Danielle Smith when she went up against the federal court. Against the plastic straws ban. And she says, well, it's found to be unlawful. Okay, so plastic straws are coming back? Plastic bags are coming back? No. Okay, so what was the point then? Well, we can all say that it's illegal, that it's unconstitutional. Okay, but you're still doing it is the problem, right? Yeah. There's never any change.
But you get to tweet and gain political capital because you said, hey, look, I went and did this. I fought them and I won. Look how much I'm doing for you.
Well, and it's funny because when you talked earlier and said, the 4 years of running, that your last year is about trying to get reelected, a lot of people are saying that's what Danielle Smith's running into with these Alberta Next panels going around saying, hey, we'd like to put in an Alberta pension plan. We're maybe thinking about an Alberta police force. And people are going, but you talked about this a couple of years ago. Why are you now interested in running around and doing that? And a lot of people are saying, well, it's because Albertans are wanting to separate. A lot of Albertans want their independence. And she's going to have an election in 2 years. So she's ramping everybody up to think, hey, everybody, listen, I'm listening to you. I give a shit. Let's hear what you have to say. Now, I think it's a little bit more in depth than that. Again, I do play a little political bias because I'm in touch with her folks. I think that a lot of it also has to do with feeling the waters in terms of Alberta independence and where people stand. There's a little bit more to it than just that. But it definitely would make the average person who pays attention to politics question, is this all a show, or do these politicians actually care to listen to us? Because what we see in the federal house is they don't.
Even if you go in with the best of intentions and wanting to do whatever you want to get done, or whatever it is you've promised the people who elected you you're going to do, you still have to play their game by their rules. And you still have to, if you want to keep your job, you still have to play the re-election game. So you have to cater to the certain people and try and win enough seats to win your votes to get your seat back so you can keep going for another 4 years and then maybe try. It's like playing football where the best you can hope for is to gain, a first down every year. You know what I mean? Like you're trying to move the ball forward, even if you're one of the people who is trying to move the ball forward. Not that and most of them are. But even Danielle Smith has to fight the system from within the system. Same with Pierre Poilievre. He has to try to play the game according to that little red dot's rules.
Yeah, never easy. Snow, $5 super chat. I think a compact of free association with the United States is the best plan for both the U.S. and Alberta. I agree with that. I think we could have good trade deals. Raptor Guy, $5 super chat. Liberals would vote for Paul Bernardo if he was leader of their party. Absolutely, they would. Brian, wow, very generous tonight, Brian. Another $5 super chat. Thank you so much. We were out of debt to get put back into debt by the Liberal government. I think being independent erases our debt that the Liberals did and starts fresh. So it doesn't completely erase it. That's part of the discussions that take place in good faith that we talk about, that if Alberta were to trigger a referendum question and be successful, then First Nations leaders, all premiers, as well as federal government would have to meet with provincial government to negotiate in good faith Alberta's exit. And a lot of that would come down to things like federal parks, jurisdiction. Are we going to buy the federal parks and incur debt for that? Do First Nations want to stay within Alberta and be under a new treaty, or do they want their existing treaty and we look after it, or do they remain a part of Canada? All of those things get discussed. And if people are saying, well, give me
things like that.
Yeah. So when people say, well, I want it down to the word and down to the science, keep in mind, folks, we're entering uncharted territory. We've never been there before. So if we were to get that vote, and I always laugh when people go, well, you're never going to get it. I don't think we'd have as much opposition from people in terms of actually getting to the vote if people thought that it was a nothing burger. I always find that hilarious, but we're all going to learn together, folks, how this works, because the talk of the town, at least that I see, is that Alberta's moving towards independence. And I'm going to get on that in a sec. Cuba Bound, another $5 super chat. Thank you so much. Maybe instead of question period, we should have answer period with a hefty fine for lying. So they'd be fined every day, but hey, I'm on board. Yeah. Thinking $20,000 per lie out of their own money. That would be wonderful. First off, they'd have to prove it. Second of all, they'd never.
I'll settle for just actually answering the question, whether you're lying or not. I'll settle for that. That's a start.
I want a government where you have to have full transparency. You know, like if we're giving you perks, if we're giving you good pay and write-offs and everything else, you should have like, we don't have to look at your bank accounts, but you should have to submit those first off to an office that audits everything. I think that any claims you're making have to be carefully followed, just like we do with our taxes. Like Matt, you're self-employed. When you file your taxes, I'm sure you can't hand your accountant, bills for $5,000 from a liquor store and say, well, I just want to go drinking with my friends.
I always make that joke when I'm at the gas station and I buy lottery tickets and they're like, you want the receipt? I'm like, not unless Trudeau starts letting me writing off lotteries.
Right.
But yeah, it's they go over my stuff with a fine-tooth comb, and if they find something, you're going to get a letter about it.
And I think it should be the same for government employees. And I think that transparency, just like corporate tax returns, keep in mind, folks, you can find people's corporate tax returns online. The government's corporate tax returns, any of the members in there should be available online as well. I think we have the right, since they are elected by us, to see what's going on. And if they're found to be in violation, if it's a minor violation, give them a fine. Do what you would do with regular taxation for people. If you're going to be abusing the system like Justin Trudeau was, I think parliamentary privilege should have its own limits in terms of where we can and can't prosecute charges.
For sure.
I think that's the biggest thing, is that the government is allowed to behave this way. There's no
I can't think of
there's no limits.
Politician in my lifetime that's committed some sort of fraud or lying or any of that's faced any consequences whatsoever, other than I have to resign.
Yeah. Mrs. Fringe chiming in, they should be accountable for every penny spent. That will never happen. Well, the reason it would be good if it did happen, if you found that Pandora's box, or that silver bullet politician that was able to get in, campaigning on all this stuff that's good for us and bad for the system, if they came in and switched it around to that kind of stuff, that kind of transparency, you'd see most politicians quit. They'd all leave, which means the ones that we get into office would probably be the ones that are worth representing us, because they'd have to follow the rules and they'd be comfortable following the rules.
Their personal finances aside, I think all government spending should be open source accounting. Like, I should be able to log into the Government of Canada website and line by line look at every single penny they spend, if that's what I want to do.
Yep. Well, it's our money and we have the right.
Exactly.
And that's part of it, is if we're going to fund it, it's like being a shareholder in a company. Shareholders are allowed to look at financial records of companies and things like that, financial reportings. It should be no different for taxpayers who are paying into a system. I think that when it comes to even things like investments, you know, you've got all these conflicts of interest with Mark Carney, and you've also got people coming in saying, you know, well, Mark Carney's got a blind trust. He doesn't know what's me. He still holds stock option, and he knows that some of those stocks are with Brookfield and are with Westinghouse and the companies that he was representing before becoming prime minister. You should either have to dump all of your stock when you become a politician, or that should be a transparent blind trust so that people know if the contracts they're given are tied to conflicts of interest.
Especially when you're a politician of that level, like the prime minister of all of Canada. Like, if you're a local MP in a small town, like, whatever, nobody cares what you do. But, you know, you have the power to grant contracts, and not even just that, make laws that affect contracts for everybody. And like, you see that a lot in the States, where, like, for example, what's her face? Pelosi, like, she's passing laws, and then before she finishes passing the law, she invests in a stock, and then all of a sudden that law passes and that stock goes up. So, like, you're not being corrupt in so much as you're getting paid from these companies, but you're passing legislation that affects the stock price of a company, but investing before you pass the law.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's interesting to see what's going to happen in Nancy Pelosi. I know she's under a lot of heat for what's going on. So again, well, she probably won't see a day in jail. I'll tell you that. Saved by Grace, $7 super chat. Last weekend in Edmonton, the line to sign the petition of Tom Lukaszik's was all but 75 plus, all wearing masks outside. It was almost 30 degrees. I mean, look, they were in Spruce Grove, from my understanding, and I misheard Mrs. Fringe. She did tell me they were out there. I wished I would have heard her correctly, because I would have went there with a camera and ambushed them and, you know, told them they all suck or whatever. But apparently it was an 80-20 split. You know, 80% of the people were saying, we're out of here. 20% said they want to stay, but those 20% were, you know, the typical type of people that you would expect to see saying they want to stay and bend over for the government. Raptor guy with a $2 super chat. Carney equals Boissonneau 2.0. Boissonneau, see, he got away with what he was doing, just like every other liberal, and Carney's far worse. And the reason I say Carney is worse is we have that interview of him sitting down before he was elected, stating that policy pushes profits. And while he was advising Justin Trudeau pro bono, essentially the policies that Trudeau put forward benefited Brookfield. It benefited Westinghouse. One of the important things to remind you guys, for all the people who are naysayers to Alberta independence, is this tweet here. Somebody put, has the UCP MLAs or minister or the premier or anybody tied to the UCP government signed the Forever Canadian petition yet? Meaning Tom Lukaszik's petition. Just curious. A lot of people are saying, well, they're not allowed. Well, if they're registered voters, they are. Pierre Poilievre was allowed to vote in his own by-election. You're all allowed one vote. So the real question is, and this is one of the things I showed in today's video, you had Tom Lukaszik's people in the Alberta Next panel saying to Danielle Smith, if you want a free and sovereign Alberta within Canada, why don't you sign the petition? She refused because she's not taking a side. So again, I think
politics.
She's playing politics. She's playing the diplomacy card. I give her props for that. And you'll always have people who say, oh, don't be so naive. Danielle's, you know, just as bad as the rest of them. Until I see it, I'm going to believe that what I'm seeing based on action is that she's defending the rights, regardless of where she stands. She's defending the rights of Albertans to make up their own mind, to decide for themselves rather than shut down free speech. I think it's admirable. I think that I think that Alberta is on the right path towards independence. Again, we'll see what happens with the court hearings. I'll keep everybody up to speed on that one. Matt, there was something else. If we go a little bit more international, when we talk about corruption, we talk about
it ties in.
The game being rigged. You had a lot to talk about with China and the deals going on there. Why don't we move on to that?
Okay, so in our country, we are doing the climate initiatives with the car electric vehicle ban, or not the ban, the gas vehicle ban coming in, and they're saying everyone's gonna have electrical cars. They haven't approved a single resource extraction project of any kind in I don't even know how long. There's no pipelines, there's no oil, there's no nothing. 10 years ago, Russia started building a $110 billion megaport in the north. They are building a fleet of nuclear icebreaker ships, ice-capable cargo containers, oil pipelines. They're building an entire town and power plants in their north. They're investing heavily in the north because the ice is melting. Now, you can take an argument about whether or not that's man-made or whether it's just naturally shifting. That doesn't really matter. It's immaterial to this topic. The thing is that Russia, with investments from both China and the UAE, is investing heavily in northern infrastructure. And on either side of this port, they're on the far right side and the far left side of their country, they have smaller ports where they're going to offload and cross-dock all of the things that they're shipping to regular ships to get them around, because it's 42 days difference to sail through the north compared to going all the way around to get to China or other places like that. And so they're not spending all this money doing all this for nothing. China's not investing in this infrastructure in Russia for nothing. And they're sending exploratory teams into the north for minerals, oil. They're building all this infrastructure, and we're doing the exact opposite of that. And we are a northern nation, and you'd be surprised how many people think of Russia as some country that's way over there in Europe. They're right above us. And if they're going to keep moving further into the north, like, we're going to come into conflict with them. Like, Russia is not just yes, they already have a fleet of nuclear icebreakers, but they're building more, is what I'm saying, and brand new ones. And like I said, this was 10 years ago. They are 10 years ahead of us in this, and we are doing none of that. We're doing the exact opposite. We're hamstringing our resource extraction. We have enough of all of the minerals that they're supposedly going to want for all of these electric cars and solar panels. We have them right here, but we're not mining any of it. And we have oil, we have natural gas, we have softwood lumber, and the great farmland in Manitoba and Saskatchewan and parts of Alberta. And especially with this conflict that they're creating with the states, where's it going to go? We don't have the infrastructure. And that's one other thing I wanted to bring up, which ties into the Alberta Independence thing. Because if you guys are going to go, you should take Saskatchewan and Manitoba with you, so you can get you can get a deep water port in the northern BC, but then you got to cut through the mountains to get to it. Whereas Churchill's right there, that should be a deep water port. We should be running pipelines, highways, rail. Build a shipyard somewhere that starts building nuclear icebreakers. We have some. They're old. They're crappy. We don't have very many, if any, ice-capable cargo ships. And that passage up north is opening. And let me tell you, if we don't go up there, Russia's gonna.
Yeah, it's ours for the taking. And again, the early bird gets the worm. If you're not going to take advantage of it, then ultimately you lose out. But the country doesn't seem to mind that. And this is, again, where it plays into where people say guys like Mark Carney are here just simply to siphon off the country. They're just here to bankrupt Canada and leave, much like he did in the UK. So they've talked about icebreakers before. We've heard Wob Canoe mention icebreakers, and he thinks that getting a port up in Hudson's Bay is beneficial. But again, it's all talk. We never do anything about it. And that seems to be the biggest issue. Now, when you mentioned earlier Alberta Independence, I do want to clear one thing up, because somebody had mentioned that I said Pierre was able to vote. I did say in his by-election, I meant to say federal elections. But if you're allowed to vote, you should be able to vote in those things. Mark Scott with a $2 super chat. Thank you. No legal path for Canada to join the US. None. Fair enough. Thank you for the super chat. Here's the issue when you talk about Saskatchewan, Manitoba going alongside Alberta. I think what has to happen on the independence front is that as I said earlier, we're in uncharted territory, right? No province has successfully triggered a valid referendum to secede from Canada or from Confederation. So if Alberta were to leave, there's more support in Saskatchewan than there is in Alberta for independence. A lot of that is because Saskatchewan has more rural communities than municipal. So they have a better vote for independence, again, when it comes to the farmers, when it comes to agriculture. So you're going to have more push there. I think if Alberta left, you would definitely have Saskatchewan jump on board.
Manitoba would be a tough sell.
They would issue their next one. Manitoba's the tough sell, at least southern Manitoba. Like, as soon as you get into western Manitoba, like anything west of Winnipeg, you're usually okay. Again, when you get into the grain farmers and the wheat farmers and, anybody who understands basic economics has common sense. But as soon as you get into Winnipeg as a city, and as much as I love Winnipeg, there are a lot of older liberal voters they're stuck in the 1960s that still think this is a good time to be behind the Liberals. They'll never change. And it doesn't seem to matter how bad things get. In fact, I used to see it when I came to visit during the COVID days, just how serious people were about things, that they would not listen to reason. They wouldn't listen to anybody's difference in opinion. Anytime you talk negative about Justin Trudeau, you get pushback in places like Winnipeg. So in terms of them changing their minds and saying, maybe we go independence, I think, again, it would come down to economics. If Alberta and Saskatchewan were to leave, I think it'd be an easier sell for Manitoba because they'd look at the economical side of it. But by that time, Alberta's already done the haul on here's the bad times, here's the good times. Now we have our footing.
The other issue would be is you would just have to, because even if you got Alberta and Saskatchewan, you'd be landlocked. But then you'd have to be at the mercy of the states, because you're not going to get BC to come either. It's full communist. So either way, you go left or right to get to the ocean somehow. You'd have to have a deal with the states to ship your oil south and have them deal with it after, which takes a cut, right?
Yeah, it's hard to gauge. I mean, the problem with the government is, while all of these ideas seem very intuitive when it comes to unlocking, Canada's economic possibilities, especially when you talk about getting away from America and saying that, look, if we were to expand beyond America and not keep the focus on them in international markets, we do need to talk about things like icebreakers. We do need to talk about pipelines. We do need to talk about lithium and all these other things that we can essentially harvest out of the ground. The problem in Canada, and the problem that we're going to continue to run into, is spinning our wheels in the mud with a government that, as you stated earlier during things like question period, they just want to spin their wheels in the mud and not actually answer any questions. They don't want to do their jobs. They essentially just want to get their paychecks, leave, go home, line their pockets, call it a day, get their pensions, and quit. So I guess for the country to get better, if independence doesn't happen, what is the solution? Where do we go from there? How do we make Canada a decent country to live in if Alberta were to stay? That should be the better question. Your mic's muted.
Sorry, I muted it because I was clicking on my keyboard. If you want to pull that up, we could start by not selling our minerals to China. Like, why are there Chinese owners of mines in Manitoba? Why?
That's a good question.
And it's the same thing in the States. Why are there Chinese buying American farmland and Canadian farmland? Like, well, they're not shooting at us. But China is a hostile foreign nation who is constantly engaged in social engineering, political interference, cyber warfare, industrial espionage, constantly. So I don't know why anybody does anything with them. I mean, because of the money, right? Companies will like, oh, China will come in and invest in our company and I can get my 401k and retire. But like, you're letting the government of China, which is there are businesses, but it's a communist country. So the business is the government. So why are they owning mines in Manitoba? And like, they're petitioning our government to drain a lake for their mine.
Well, and they were running police stations in Canada as well.
Still are. Somebody asked a question. I just saw a tweet today. I didn't save it, but somebody was like, "Hey, are there still police stations in Canada?" And like, we can't answer that.
Unreal. But this is where we are. This is the world we're in. And that's where I'm saying that it's not dumping on Pierre by saying nothing's going to change. Again, I think the only thing we benefit from Pierre's election is decent opposition in the House of Commons. But much like Matt was saying earlier, we're not going to have anybody answering any questions when it comes to question period. We're just going to get the rhetoric. Even as Keith Wilson said, as he sat down with Ezra Levant on today's video, Mark Carney's just going to dodge question period as much as possible. He doesn't like being questioned. He doesn't like when the dialogue is not in his favor. He also doesn't have the ability to spar with Pierre Poilievre verbally on the level that Pierre can. Mark Carney is a banker. He's not a politician. He is not a linguist. I got some honorable mentions here. Mark with another $2 super chat. Liberals are nice. You have globalist leftists. I mean, I know some liberals that are okay.
They're probably old though, right? They think it's still the Liberal Party from the 90s.
Yes. Yeah, they're back in the Chrétien days saying that things are okay. Another $2 super chat from Mark. Thank you so much. The USA is stopping the Chinese from purchases. Yes, now they are. Patrick with the $2 super sticker. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Essentially, the question remains, folks, that while I try to keep, or at least think that we'll keep streams as positive as we can moving forward, I certainly don't want to focus on the negative. The question does remain to you, the viewer, to everyone. How do we have a country that works together, that stays sovereign, that allows for all provinces to work together? Maybe not Quebec. Nobody likes Quebec. But how do we stay as Canada? Given the finances we see of independence, given the behavior of our government, given the corruption that's out there, how do we remain a country at this point, or are we all FUBAR?
Don't make me bust out my Alex Jones impression, chat. They keep thinking I look like Alex Jones.
They say we're putting chemicals in the water.
Oh, God.
Patrick O'Donnell, $2 super chat. Make Alberta great again, better together. Listen, I think Alberta would be great to stay in Canada. I love Canada. It's my country. But again, as I said on today's video, at some point in time, it's not the country that's the problem. It's the people running it. It's the system. It's the fact that politicians are the new mob racket. They are able to rig the system to get whatever they want, and there's no accountability. There's no transparency. Our leaders that we want representing us in the House of Commons aren't able to get elected into power because the game has been rigged against us. I asked Mrs. Fringe earlier, it's kind of like going and playing a slot machine, and you keep sticking in $100 bills, and every once in a while it gives you $5 wins. At some point you run out of money. And the question is, do you smash the machine and take some of your money back and run? Or do you just keep coughing money in until you're broke? That's where we are as a country. Do we keep paying into a system that only takes advantage of us and offers us no benefit, leaves the door open for wild immigration, crime, drugs, addiction, issues, unalivings, car theft, overtaxation, wasteful spending from a government, no accountability, no transparency? Or do we start saying, look, if you guys aren't going to get your act together, we're going to have to pack our bags and go? That's the problem.
I have been in this for years trying to think, like, how do you fix what we have? And it all comes down to that picture earlier. Half of Canada lives here. Half of the seats live there. That is all one giant city. And people who live in giant cities and go from elementary school to high school to college to some white collar job where you're in an office and you just drive back and forth to your office in your car and you watch Netflix and grab a bottle of wine on the way home, and that's your whole life. Like, you've never hunted, you've never fished, nobody's ever punched you in the face. You have no concept of the danger or the things that happen in the real world. Like, how do you... Of course, those people were easy to get locked into their houses. They're scared of everything because nothing bad has ever happened to them. Mm-hmm. And they all live in that spot. and they control everything. So what does a person who lives in that little red space know about working a fishing ship off the coast of Canada, or working in the oil patch, lifting whatever, or farming, or any of it? Like, there's so many people. You know how many people I know personally, women, who voted for Justin Trudeau because they think he's hot?
Yeah, we've talked about that before.
It's a lot. Like, on such things is the fate of our country decided.
Unreal. Nate, $5 super chat. Nobody wants to actually say it, but we do it the same way the U.S. did in the 1700s. Not saying I want to see it happen, but maybe it needs to. I know we're talking about revolt, but it's
I mentioned earlier that I wasn't going to say that.
Well, and that's the thing, is that, and I've said it before too, that I think there's and this was something I did say during the pandemic, and I've said before on stream, there's only so far you can push an animal into a corner before it swipes back. And that's the thing, folks, is that as bad as things are going to get, at some point in time in the very near future, if all we see is more word salad, if we don't start seeing deals being made, green lights coming forward, people going back to work, keep in mind that the jobs that are available right now are going to DEI hires so companies can save money. People who live in Canada can't even get the jobs that their employers are offering. Eventually, at some point, the people in Winnipeg, the people in Toronto, the people in Calgary, the people in Vancouver, they're going to snap. And they're going to say, I can't do this anymore. I'm not living in a tent. I'm not going to live in the back of a car with my children. I'm going to go steal what I need for groceries. Or I'm going to go tell my boss to shut. Like, my boss comes in and fires me. It's going to be like a scene from Fight Club. I'm going to stand up and knock him out and say, you don't get to fire me to hire somebody from India to take my place for less money. The government's going to start saying to people at press conferences while during questions are being answered, listen, we've got a plan for everything. And someone's going to walk up and punch one of them right in the nose, because they're going to have enough. And they're going to say, we can't live like this anymore. And all it's going to take is a couple of people to do it before people start saying, okay, we get a little bit of confidence, we're pushing back. Things are going to change.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, I don't know what the solution is within the system. I mean, Alberta's taking a poll, or they're thinking about it, but Carney is a symptom of the problem, because Trudeau was also a symptom of the problem, and it's a revolving door. There's no better, no worse. It's a symptom. And the problem is the system itself, because it's designed to constantly put people like Trudeau and Carney in power.
Mm-hmm. Mark with a $2 super chat. Don't pay the equalization payments. This is bribery. The problem with the equalization payments is that there's many things that happen as soon as the premier stops. And much like I said earlier about Pierre or anybody else going to Parliament Hill and saying, we're going to, flip the electoral system on its head, it would be political suicide.
Is there nobody monitoring the chat? This one guy's just spamming.
No, that's coming in from X. That happens by accident. That's
okay.
X. So the stream software we use, anytime somebody chats on X, it just spams the chat. It's something they have to work out.
Okay.
I feel bad because I've mentioned that user before, and they get upset because they think I'm harping on them, but it's actually the software doing that. Folks, let's jump into some Q&A. We'll try and get off the negative. We'll get into some Q&A. We'll hear what you guys have to say.
Let's talk about happy things.
Let's talk about the happy stuff. David Brewer saying, why does Alberta continue to send payments to Ontario? Because they have to. That's the problem.
There's a legal framework for it.
There is, and Pierre keeps saying Alberta is constantly told to shut up and pay, and that's kind of the way it's going right now. How else do you expect these people to go from a net worth of 1.5 million to 100 million in 9 years? Well, yeah, that's where we are. Look at what Justin Trudeau did.
We ask that question and nothing ever comes of it. Nobody ever digs into it. Nobody ever proves anything. And then he just retires and now he's gone. No, I mean, he posts some pictures of him on vacation with his daughter. He's having his best life. But for the most part, nobody talks about him anymore. Nobody cares. It's already forgotten.
No consequences. Yep. See you later. Don't forget to shut the lights off on the way out. This isn't really a question, but I like what's being said here by Neptune Rain. Trudeau has started the separation of people. He started the hate between neighbors, friends, family. Anyone who doesn't agree are an enemy. Carney's continuing it. That's why people can't get along. It's a mix of that. And when you look at social media, when you look at people's frustrations, keep in mind that when you're already in a world that Trudeau created on separating from each other, when you've got all that divisive behavior, keep in mind somebody goes to their job and they're told, hey, we got to cut back. We're going to have to let you go. Or you go to the grocery store and spend your last $20 bills buying lunch stuff for your kid for the week, and there's no money to buy dinner. Or you get a past due bill from your utility company and you can't even pay your rent. Anytime one of these bad things happens, it sets people off. They go over their limit, and before you know it, we're attacking each other. And nobody understands, like, oh, people are just toxic. No, they're going through hell, and they're taking it out on each other. If we're ever going to get back to normal, things got to change.
I don't know if that's why the blue-haired polyamorous they-thems are so nasty.
Well, those are different.
They're separate.
They're a different cut of cloth. Let me see if I can find an actual Q&A in here, because I'm skipping through. Let's see. Yeah, people are just commenting about Trudeau. What is the legal repercussions if we stop transfer payments? Let me look that up. Let's look that up. Let's ask Grok.
That's an interesting question. Oh, Grok.
What are the legal repercussions if Alberta stops?
I mean, I'm sure they could dick them around in court for years. Like, they would take them to court, say, no, you have to pay this, and then there'd be some sort of whatever. But I mean, I don't know what else they would be able to do. I'm sure there's some sort of thing they could stop in response.
The reason I asked Grok, and the reason I want to pull it up, is because then YouTube can't say that I'm spreading misinformation or lies. Let's take a look at what Grok has to say. I'm assuming you're referring to a scenario where Alberta as a province attempts to withhold or stop paying federal taxes or contributions that fund federal transfer payments, such as equalization. This interpretation is based off the fact that the provinces don't directly make transfer payments to the federal government. Rather, individuals and businesses in Alberta pay federal taxes, which Ottawa then redistributes as transfers to provinces and territories. If you meant something else, please clarify. So it says there's no direct precedent for a Canadian province unilaterally stopping federal tax contributions. So the legal repercussions would depend on how Alberta attempts to do this and the federal government's response. Here's a breakdown of potential legal consequences grounded in Canada's constitutional and fiscal framework. The federal government has exclusive authority over taxation related to income, corporate taxes, and GST. Alberta attempting to block or redirect federal tax collection would likely be deemed unconstitutional, as provinces lack the authority to interfere with federal taxation powers. Supreme Court of Canada could strike down any provincial legislation or action attempting to withhold federal taxes, citing the division of powers. It also says Canada Revenue Agency administers federal taxes, and individuals and businesses in Alberta are legally obligated to pay them. If the government encouraged non-compliance, the federal government could pursue legal action against non-compliant taxpayers under the Income Tax or Excise Tax Act. Penalties can include fines, interest of unpaid taxes, or even criminal charges for tax evasion in severe cases. So think of Trudeau freezing people's bank accounts during the Freedom Convoy, but then make it about taxes. Think about the Emergency Act. Think about all that stuff and say, what would the federal government do to Alberta if they stopped paying their taxes? I think the turnout would be pretty. We already know what we would expect from that. It says the federal government could respond by withholding transfer payments to Alberta, which again is less than we give. If Alberta passed legislation to interfere with federal tax collection, the federal government could challenge it in court, seeking an injunction. There's many different repercussions, but ultimately none of it fares well for Alberta. The biggest problem is it falls onto the people, is the problem. Premiers, by the sounds of it, cannot encourage people living in Alberta, don't pay your taxes.
Pretty much. But once again, it's a legal thing. Like they'll take you to court and they'll charge you with this and charge you with that. But if you just tell them to kick rocks to the point where it's like you either have to come over here and physically fight me or shut up. You know what I mean?
Well, Randy says here the only way through is independence. I couldn't agree more.
Like if some judge in Ottawa says, no, you have to pay your taxes, what are they going to do if you don't?
Well, throw you in jail, take your home, take your vehicle, your work, your business.
If you're in Alberta and Alberta says we're not doing any of that, then what are they going to do? Send somebody from Ottawa all the way over there?
Well, that's a good question. It sounds like things would get heated pretty quickly.
Yes.
And who knows?
That's how you get to that action we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, when we talk about revolution, and we'll say that in the nicest way possible, that is where we get there. Adam's saying government says we want 80% tax. If you do not comply, you're a racist and homophobic. I mean, yeah, that's essentially the way it goes. How long do you think it will take Carney to find excuses to avoid question period? Within the first 24 hours of being back, I guarantee you, he'll be finding every way to avoid it under the sun.
Behind a plant.
Gerald saying, Derek, if it gets a lot worse in Canada, do you think there could be a civil war? It happened many years ago. So, as we mentioned with things like revolutions, anything's possible. I won't say never, never. The problem is who's going to fight that war? You know, you talk to half the Gen Zs who don't even want to get out of bed before 11 a.m. Like it's.
There are times where I think that the governments are literally waiting for people. Like I train constantly with both my water pistols and physically. And sometimes I literally think that the governments of the world are waiting for people our age to die off, because my nephews, like the 20-year-olds right now, they ain't doing nothing. Like the kids I know who are like in their 20s, they're not fighting anything.
Well, they're taking it. They don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care. And it's funny. And just a reminder, folks, when Matt says he's practicing with water pistols, he's not actually talking about water pistols. It's the same as talking about shovels. Keep in mind.
Yes.
Yeah, we're talking about shovels here. We're not so better than water pistols. But I can already hear somebody typing it in the comments after the stream. Well, why does this guy think he's so great? He's practicing with water pistols. Like,
I'm trying to avoid saying the real word. Okay, I don't want to get the video banned.
John saying I'm sick of the hopeless being communicated in this stream. Look, John, it's not about trying to pile on hopelessness. What we're trying to do is be a collective here of like-minded individuals talking about what is a solution to this. The hopelessness is what's being put in front of us by our federally elected government. So as a collective, it's good to come around and say, so how do we fix it? How do we talk about making it better? How do we get away from this? I know for other people, they're going to say, well, I live in Ontario and we're not going to separate anytime soon. I can't just pack up and leave. Keep in mind that the reason I talk about Alberta independence so much, the reason I bring up how fed up Albertans are, isn't to push back and smite people in other provinces. You have to realize that even if Alberta loses its vote on independence, Alberta will win. The country will win, because that is a form of an uprising that you're going to see real statistics, real numbers from, and it's going to send a message to the federal government that we need to start taking those other provinces a little more serious, or we're in trouble. Our bank accounts are infected. Our GDP is affected. People are going to go. There's no more just bend over and take it. So what we're talking about isn't necessarily hopelessness. It's that it's going to get darker before the light comes. We have to find a way to find the light and decide how we move forward to capture it. Never trying to be negative. It's reality.
There's a lot. That is exactly what it is. It is reality. And, you know, I have hope for the future. I want to do things, but we're just discussing how. What can we do? Even as individuals, what can we do to try and get us out of whatever this is we're in?
Carson El Gringo Grande saying 500 thumbs up for free memberships. Where are we at on the likes, folks? Are we not at 500 likes yet? Really? Have we not hit that? I figured an hour and 20 minutes in, we'd be long past that. A Master of Snatch saying, I have tons of shovels myself. Snatch has a very acute collection of shovels. In fact, somebody would say, it's more than the Canadian military, and he would say it's a modest collection. It's
yeah, you gotta hang on to those.
455. Really? Can we get another 45 likes, guys, so that we can see some memberships out in the chat? Let me know if we can hit that thumbs button, guys. It's free to do so. Hit that like button. Let's see if we can get to the 500.
Maybe I'll make that my topic for next week. Our public safety minister talking about how the gun buyback is starting in September.
Stinger saying, I wonder if Brookfield Infrastructure has investment in rebuilding Ukraine. More than likely. I mean, Brookfield has their hands in just about everything these days, and that's part of the problem. I've got I'm not going to say who, but there's somebody in my family, my extended family, that I don't know overly well. But I was talking to somebody in family about them, and I said, I heard times are getting a little tough. I heard that because they're an beyond middle-aged adult living with their family members, and those family members are very senior citizens, like very old senior citizens, and at some point, that situation is going to change. And that person who is a middle-aged person living in that home with said senior citizen will not be able to. I'm trying to be vague because I don't want people in my family to know who I'm talking about, by the way. They said, I said what to one of my other family members, what are they going to do when that situation changes and they're no longer allowed to live there? When they don't work, they can't afford to get on their own. They can't afford to do anything. They said, well, we've already talked to them. They said they're going to go get made because they just can't be homeless. They don't want to be homeless. They can't find a job. They can't get it. They're just going to go get made. And I said, what's really sad about that is that if you want to do those kind of things, that's your choice. I mean, the government has made it your choice. But there are people with terminal illnesses out there, people who are really struggling, that would give anything to switch positions with those people, that want to throw everything away and say, well, I can't make it ahead in life, so I'm just going to do this because it's easy, it's free. The government's going to just get rid of me on their dime because I'm too much of a nuisance. I never thought we'd get to a point in life where we had to decide that do we Soylent Green ourselves or do we carry on?
Yeah, the maid is an interesting one.
We'll get into that on a different stream. I think we hit the 500. Aaron Morrison gifting 10 unacceptable Fringe memberships to the Patriots Club, as well as Carson El Gringo Grande gifting 10 unacceptable Fringe memberships to the Patriots Club. Thank you so much. Guys, we're rambling at this point. I wanted us to get those 500 likes in because I know Carson and Aaron, you guys are great supporters of the channel. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who chimed in tonight. Thank you to everybody who joined us. Again, our apologies that Celtic Canuck couldn't make it tonight. Again, some family emergencies. Hope all is well with Celtic Canuck. Hope to see her next week. Guys, don't forget, if you haven't hit the thumbs up yet, hit the thumbs up on the way out of the stream. Join me Friday night for Friday Night Fringe with Mrs. Fringe. We're going to be talking about everything else that happened this week in politics. It's going to be a great show. Mark this on your calendars next Wednesday. Join us for Unhinged Fringe. We're going to have more topics to talk about, more goings on in the government as we're getting close to everyone coming back to the House of Commons. I'm sure there's going to be some lovely things to talk about with Doug Ford and all those other usual suspects within the government. So with that, folks, from myself and from Matt, wish you all the best this week. I'll see you Friday night. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll catch you on the next one. Take care. Have a good night.